We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! I'm Uruzi. Part 6 of What If Naruto Didn't Become the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Naruto was born 5 years before the Kyuubi attack and the fox was sealed into his younger sister. His parent don't have the time to teach him, so he looks to others to help him become a great shinobi. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 20. Comeback of a Hero. 2 years later. The sound of footsteps echoed through the empty forest as a lone figure covered in shadows walked at a steady pace. Though his body was shrouded in the shadows, his eyes could be seen clearly. His violet eyes flickered all around before they locked onto a building that stood in front of him. It was barely standing and looked to be some kind of old shrine. The front of it was half elevated while the rest had crumbled to the ground with one of the red pillars broken off in the middle. The rest of the building was cracked and had moss growing all over it. The most striking feature though was the numerous Uzumaki symbols that decorated it. He wondered how his mother had never known about this shrine, but guessed that since it was some miles away from the Leaf Village and with the destruction of Yuzu, he guessed she must have thought it no longer existed, if she knew it existed in the first place. Slowly he walked up the ruined steps of the old shrine and stepped into the main hall, where he stopped and looked at the giant wall in front of him. At the top of the wall were 3 Uzumaki spiral in a triangle formation. Beneath the symbols were 3 rows of masks, each with 9 masks that resembled the Shinigami hanging there. Beneath them was a pit of black fire that flickering wildly. He wondered just how long that fire had been burning. Then he closed his eyes and sensed the masks for any residue of chakra. His eyes flickered from beneath his eyelids before his eyes snapped open and his violet pupils zeroed in on the Shinigami mask that was on the 2nd row and 6th mask across from left to right. Not being able to pick up due to the black fire, the figures unsheathed a sword that was strapped to his back and used the sword to knock it off the wall before managing, with great skill, to balance the mask on the tip of his sword. Once in his hands he resheathed his sword and looked at the mask. It did look a little frightening and wondered if that was what the Shinigami really looks like. The long teeth made it look like some kind of beast or demon. Power like this should not be left out in the open just like this. In the wrong hands this could be used to conquer entire villages and countries. I have to make sure that this mask stays locked away. I pray I never have to use this mask and its abilities, he muttered before he sealed the mask into a spare storage scroll. He had before sealing that scroll into a seal on his wrist. Looking around he felt the history of his old clan in this room and wondered what would have happened to it if Yuzu was still with them today. Taking one last look at the room he turned his back and left the building. Once outside he looked back towards the old shrine and did a few hand signs before slamming his hand on the ground. All around the area new trees began growing out of the earth and create a new dense cover and wall around the shrine, completely hiding it from view. Grinning at his work he then ran up the tree and stood on one of the top branches. Just a little ways off in the distance he could see light and buildings lay beside a familiar-looking mountain he had grown up with. Home, he said before he ran along the tree tops. Though before he could go much closer he stopped when he felt a familiar chakra signature he had not felt in 3 years. Mito-chan? He thought before he then sensed 2 others with her. One he could tell was hurt while the third had a vile chakra about him. He could feel the other chakra signature's intentions. His eyes narrowed before he suddenly shot off from the ground. Few miles outside of Leaf Village. Mito had never been so scared in her entire life. Sure, she had been in some scary situations before, like the time she and Eiji called Tsunade an old hag and then got chased around the village by the enraged Sannin for a good half a day before their mother eventually saved them. Then there was the time when she was 4 and she got stuck in a tree. After calling out for help, eventually her brother's friend Enko appeared and got her out. Now though she was stuck and alone. She had passed the Genin exams earlier that day with all her friends and her twin, and they were going to go celebrate when Mizuki-sensei pulled her over and spoke to her about an extra credit assignment. She had to steal the forbidden scroll from her father's office. She was not sure of it at first, but she had been stupid enough to believe Mizuki. She should have told her parents, but did she? No, she did not. Despite her father being in the office, she used a stupid jutsu Eiji had made up called the sexy jutsu. The image of a naked girl was all it took to knock her 2 sen out with a nosebleed. She felt a little disappointed that her father was a closet pervert, but she could always just tell her Ka-san later. It was only later when Irika caught her outside the village that she realized she had been tricked. She knew the village like the back of her hand, so she knew a few secret entrances that the kids used to get in and out of the village. Now though her teacher Mizuki, who turned out was a traitor, had her cornered against a tree while Irika was on the ground with a giant shuriken sticking out of his back. I have never felt so stupid before, she thought before Mizuki took a step towards her with a grin on his face. The little fox girl trapped in a corner. You were so easy to trick, it wasn't even funny. How delightful, he said as he saw Mito looked confused by the statement. Oh, you don't know, do you? You don't know the secret your family has kept from you for so long, do you? How about I enlighten you? Tell me what you know about the fox attack 13 years ago, he asked as Mito looked at him in confusion. The Nine Tails attacked and my dad managed to beat it and send it away. Mizuki laughed before smiling evilly at her. No, little girl, your dad did not defeat it like everyone thinks he did. Did you know the only way to stop a tailed beast is to seal it away? Seal it away into a person, he said as Mito had a sense of dread hit her. Don't you think it's ironic you and your brother were born just moments before the fox attack? Where do you think you got your whisker marks from? Mizuki said as Mito began to leak tears as she shook her head. You are the nine-tailed fox girl. Mizuki spoke as he laughed easily as Mito sank to the ground and held her knees in front of her face. Mito, Irika muttered but could not speak much with the weapon stuck in his back. And now I will do the world a favor and take you out of it. Mizuki said as he took a short sword from his back and ran towards Mito, who was too stunned to move. Mito's body shook as she felt this was the moment she was going to die and that she could never make up for this mistake she had made. However, before Mizuki could strike her, a loud growl ripped through the air. Mizuki stopped in his tracks as Mito opened hers and both looked to their right. From the shadows a pair of green cat eyes zoned in on Mizuki. Mizuki gulped and was about to throw some shuriken at it when an enormous white tiger leapt out of the forest and sank its jaw into Mizuki's shoulder and making him drop the sword. Ah! Mizuki screamed as the tiger's fangs sank even deeper into his shoulder. Mito looked fearful since the tiger was enormous and towered over Mizuki. It was an animal that could kill you in seconds. The tiger then began dragging Mizuki away into the shadows of the forest as Mizuki was kicking and screaming to try and get loose. His screams continued until a sickening crunch was suddenly heard and everything went quiet. Even Irika looked fearful and hoped the tiger did not come back for them. Mito looked towards the spot where Mizuki was dragged away and quickly shut her eyes when she heard footsteps coming towards them. No, go away. Ka-chan, Tu-san, save me please, she whimpered as she felt the footsteps getting closer towards her. After a moment she suddenly felt a hand gently lay on her head. Open your eyes, Mito-chan. Mito's eyes snapped open when she recognized the voice. The hand on top of her head was gently stroking her long hair. She looked at her savior and thought at first it was her dad before getting a good look at him. His hair was much too short and had no bangs framing his face but was the same shade of blonde. His eyes were violet like her mother's. He was wearing a Jonin shinobi uniform with short sleeves. He wore a dark red jacket with black flames flickering at the bottom similar to her father's jacket with a small red scarf wrapped around his neck. Who are you? She whispered and watched as he smiled at her. My little sister has forgotten me after 3 years. You wound me, Mito-chan. Mito gasped as she looked at the young man in front of her and put her hand to his cheek. Oniai-chan? She asked as watched Naruto nodded. Immediately tears leaked out of her eyes and quicker than she had ever been before she hugged him and wrapped her legs around him. She buried her head into the crook of his neck. Naruto stood up and gently comforted his little sister as she cried both from seeing her big brother again and from the scary experience she had been through. He kissed the top of her head as he held her tightly to him. Naruto looked over at Irika, who was now out cold, and quickly made a Kagebushin. Take him to the hospital, he said as the clone nodded, picked Irika up and shunshined the entire way back to the village. With Irika gone, Naruto focused on Mito, gently rubbing her back and whispered comforting words to her. It's okay, Mito-chan. I'm back now and I won't let anything happen to you, he said as Mito smiled a little at her brother's words. I've missed you so much, she sobbed as Naruto and Mito just stood there for a few moments as the brother and sister just enjoyed being with one another again after so long. Slowly she detached from him as Naruto looked down at her with a happy smile on his face. My little sister has become such a beautiful young woman now. I am going to have to scare the boys away with my blade now, he said as Mito blushed a little. Baka, Oniai-chan, she muttered, making him laugh before she noticed the giant tiger from earlier come back out from the woods. She immediately tensed up, but Naruto put a hand on her shoulder to ease her. "It's okay, Mito-chan. Kiera is with me. She is my summon," he said as Mito-chan nodded dumbly as Kiera came closer. "Thank you for getting rid of him for us, Kiera," Naruto said before he put Mito in front of him. "I would like you to meet my little sister Mito." Kiera looked down at Mito, who only barely came up to Naruto's chest, and sniffed the small girl. After a moment of silence, she licked the girl's face quickly, making Mito laugh and pat her nose. "Thank you for saving me." "You're welcome, young one. I am your brother's familiar, therefore it is only right that I help protect his younger sibling. Just be more careful next time," she said as Mito nodded. "I will see you soon, Naruto," Kiera said as Naruto nodded before she disappeared in a puff of smoke. "Since when do you have a summon?" Mito asked, looking up at her brother. He was so tall now. "I have had a summons for a long time now. I just never told anyone," he said as Mito nodded before she looked down sadly and looked ready to cry again. "What's wrong, Mito-chan?" he asked worriedly. "Oni-chan, am I the Kyuubi?" she asked before her nose twitched when Naruto flicked it. "Ow, what was that for?" "For asking a stupid question," he said before his voice went soft and gentle. "This is something you need to talk to Ka-chan and Tu-san about. You are not the nine-tailed fox, but you are connected to it in a way. They will explain it to you," he said as Mito nodded sadly before yelping as Naruto picked her up bridal style. He was surprised they had not explained it to her yet, but guessed they had been putting it off. "Now let's head home and you can explain why you were out here," he said as he took the forbidden scroll and strapped it to his back. Mito nodded and explained what happened as Naruto walked back to the Leaf Village as he listened to his little sister Namikaze's household. "Ow, Kushina, stop!" Minato whined as Kushina slapped him all over with an enraged look on her face. "How could you be so stupid that you get taken out by that stupid jutsu our son created? I should have known I married a pervert. She took me by surprise, that's all," Minato said as Eiji and Kakashi watched from the sofa as Minato got slapped by his wife. Eiji looked just like his father when he was his age and wore blue bottoms with a white shirt that had mesh armor underneath it. He looked so much like Minato that those in his family called him Mini Minato. "You are telling me that the Hokage got taken by surprise by a 12, nearly 13-year-old with a perverted jutsu? I think you are losing your touch. We will find her. I have my Umbu already looking all over the village and outside the village for her. They will find her, I promise," he said, trying to comfort his wife. "But what if he is out there, Minato? What if he gets to Mito?" Kushina whispered, since that was what terrified her with her eldest daughter being missing. Hell, she still did not know of her burden. He would not dare. Not with so many powerful shinobi in the village. We would find him in an instant otherwise. It did not make Kushina feel any better about the situation. Kami, was she going to scold that girl when she got back? Whatever made her steal the forbidden scroll like she did, it would not be enough to stop her from being grounded for the rest of her life. "Don't worry, Ka-chan, Nei-chan will be fine. She is my twin after all, and if anything happened to her then I would know about it," Eiji said, hugging his mother round the waist. He came up to just below her shoulder. Kushina sighed as hugged her youngest son before smiling a little. "I know, but it doesn't stop me from worrying. I have had to worry with your big brother being away for so long. It does not help that Mito goes and does this." Eiji was about to speak, but everyone heard the front door open and Mito's voice sound out. "Ka-chan, Tu-san," she called as her footsteps got closer to them and she appeared in the doorway to the living room with the forbidden scroll in her arms. "Mito-chan," Kushina yelled in relief as she lurched forward and hugged her daughter tightly before Minato sighed and went to call off the Umbu and taking the scroll before quickly returning. Kushina fussed over her daughter before the two parents looked at Mito sternly. "Mito, you had better start explaining why you did what you did," Minato said to her with a stern expression. Mito gulped and began to recount that Mizuki had tricked her and that she just did it because she wanted to make them proud. "Sweetheart, we are proud of you, but what you did was foolish. You could have been hurt or worse," Kushina said gently as she wiped a few of her daughter's tears from her cheek. "Your mother is right, Mito-chan," Kakashi said, speaking up. "It was very irresponsible of you. You should have checked with your parents first." "Mito, where is Mizuki now?" Minato asked, since he needed to have a very long and painful conversation with the silver-haired Chunin. "He's dead, Oni-chan took care of him," Mito said, surprising everyone in the room. "Oni-chan," they all thought before the sound of new heavy footsteps appeared. They all turned towards the living room doorway and immediately Kushina felt like crying as she saw a familiar blonde-haired boy standing in the doorway. Naruto stood at the entrance and looked at everyone in the room. Kakashi had not changed at all while he noticed Eiji looked exactly like his father. His father looked the same as well, though he had a few grays in his hair now that weren't there before. But his mother looked like she had not aged a day. She still looked like she was in her mid-30s despite being 41. His parents were stunned as they looked at him. Gone was the boy of 15 and returning to them was this handsome, strong young man that was the perfect mix of them both. "Hey Tu-san, Ka-chan," he said, looking at his parents. He could see his mother was ready to burst into tears, so he just walked forward towards her. By the time he was halfway, Kushina had already leapt forward and grabbed her eldest in a tight hug. Naruto just smiled as he rested his head on his mother's head as she sobbed away. He was taller than her by quite a lot now, and he never realized how tiny his mother was. "I missed you, Ka-chan. I missed you a lot," he whispered, and it only made her sob harder and cling more to him. "Our baby is back, Minato. Our oldest has finally come back to us," she muttered as Minato then came in and hugged his son as well, muttering how happy he was to have his eldest son back home. Eventually Mito and Eiji all joined in as well as the four hugged the return of Naruto. "You are never going away for that long ever again." Naruto wondered where Mina was, but he stopped worrying when he felt her asleep upstairs. As they broke up, Kushina put her cheeks on her son's face. "Let me get a good look at you," she said as she looked him over. The first thing she noticed was his height. "Oh Minato, look at him, he is even taller than you are now." "Well, it was bound to happen eventually," Minato said, chuckling at his son's 6'3" frame before noticing the jacket Naruto was wearing. He gave him a praising nod. "Good choice on jacket. Guess the design grew on me after all the time I wore your jacket when I was little," he said as Kushina continued to fuss over him. While the father and son duo spoke, Kushina was just awestruck with her son. "Is this really my Naruto? Is this young man really the little boy I used to carry and push on the swings? Come on over here, Eiji, I want to see what my little Ototo looks like now," he said as Eiji grinned and hugged his brother just by himself this time as Naruto patted his shoulders. "You look just like Tu-san. You been keeping up with your training, I hope." "You bet. I bet I can kick your butt soon." Eiji while Mito chimed in the same, making Naruto laugh and Minato and Kushina to look at the scene in humor. "Kakashi," Naruto greeted as he just nodded his head towards the older shinobi. Kakashi just gave a polite wave and his trademark eye smile before returning to his book. "You have to tell us what it was like, Oniai-chan. Did you go on cool missions? How strong did you get? Did you fight strong people? Where did you go?" The twins asked in tandem while Naruto tried to usher them to tone it down. "Eiji-kun, Mito-chan, your brother has probably had a long journey and will want to rest. You can ask your questions tomorrow," Minato said as Naruto looked at his father in thanks. He was not that tired, but he would have been if he started explaining it all to the twins, who would just ask more and more questions. Seeing the twins talking to each other, he stepped over to his parents' sides and ushered them to speak with him. When they both leaned in, he spoke in a hushed tone. "Mito knows about the fox. Mizuki somehow knew and told her. Irika tried to protect her, but got hurt. He is at the hospital now." Both Minato and Kushina eyes widened, wondering how the hell Mizuki knew about the Kyuubi before realizing he must have been a spy for someone. Most likely a certain snake. "This is not how we wanted to tell her, but I guess we don't have a choice now but to explain it to her," Minato said as Kushina nodded sadly. "I think you should explain it to Eiji as well. He should know what his twin carries just as much as Mito should know," Naruto said, since the twins had always been close to one another. This could be something that Eiji could help his sister with. His parents both nodded and looked at the twins sadly. "Mito-chan, I think we have some explaining to do," Kushina said as Mito quickly recognized what she was referring to. When she looked down at the ground, Kushina put an arm around her daughter and kissed her head before leading her to the dining room. "You too, Eiji, you should hear this as well," Minato said as Eiji looked a little confused before nodding and followed after his mother and sister. "Naruto, are you coming?" Naruto shook his head. "I have another little sister to surprise," he said as he took his jacket off and headed towards the stairs. Naruto tiptoed up the stairs, and when he got to the landing he went towards Mina's room. Gently he pushed the door forward and looked inside. When he did, he smiled when he saw that Mina was under her covers with a nightlight on underneath it, obviously reading a book. Naruto coughed loudly to get her attention and saw her stumble a little. "Tu-sen, I swear I was about to go to sleep," she said, making Naruto chuckled. "And what makes you think I'm Tu-san, Minaheim?" he said as watched in amusement as Mina's head snapped to his direction as the room fell quiet. He watched as she pulled back the covers and eventually uncovered herself. Naruto looked at her in amazement because she looked exactly like their mother. The eyes, the hair, the skin tone, everything. Her hair was even longer and not in pigtails anymore. It went down just past the midpoint of her back. He saw her lips quivering madly and tears already building up in her eyes. Even her little hands shook as she looked at him. "Oni-chan?" she whispered as Naruto nodded and went across the room. Just like his mother earlier, he got halfway before the little girl jumped from her bed and latched herself to him, putting her head in the crook of his neck as she sobbed. He kissed the top of her head and held her tightly to him. A few tears of his own even began making their way down his face as he quickly wiped them away. Out of the people he missed back in Konoha, he missed Mina the most. "I missed you," Mina cried out, making a few more tears slip out of Naruto's eyes. He kissed her head again and playing with long red hair as she sat down on the edge of her bed. He placed her in his lap where she still refused to unlatch from him and gently rocked her. "My baby sister is now 10 years old. Look how big you have gotten," he whispered as Mina's face left his neck and looked up at him with those big beautiful violet eyes that she shared with him. He smiled at her, which made her smile back at him, which made her giggle a sweet laugh that Naruto had missed. "You look just like Ka-chan now. Your hair has even got a lot longer, just like hers," he admitted as he played with her hair. "Lots of people keep telling me that and say I look pretty with my hair like this. Mito and her friends sometimes like to play with it too. Well, they are right. You are going to be the most beautiful girl in the entire Leaf Village," he said as Mina gave him a big smile and a kiss on the cheek. Not the sloppy kind she used to give him, but a much gentler one. "Are you back home for good? You're not going to go away again, are you?" she asked, looking a little panicked. She did not want her big brother to leave so soon again. "No, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to stay this time. My time in the capital is over and I have finally come home for good now," he said, making Mina smile even bigger at him before hugging him again. Naruto closed his eyes. He had missed this. Later that evening. It was 10 o'clock by the time his parents and the twins left the dining room, and he could see that by their red eyes that all four of them had cried. When Mina, who was sitting on his lap, asked why they were so red, Naruto told her she would find out when she was a little older. It only made her pout and give him a glare. Naruto though found it cuter than scary and just chuckled. "Mina-chan, shouldn't you be in bed?" Kushina asked, putting her hands on her hips. Mito and Eiji sat on the sofa with them as Naruto noticed his little brother was remaining very close to his sister and had their hands holding one another's. "But I wanted to see Oni-chan," she said as she gave her mother the puppy dog look. Minato fell quickly, but Kushina had an iron defense against that look. "It's okay, Ka-chan. I want to see my littlest sister so much that I could not wait another moment," Naruto stated as he gave Mina a raspberry against the cheek, which made her laugh from the sensation. "Besides, you don't think I would be gone for so long without bringing presents back, did you?" he said before all three of his siblings' dog piled on him on the sofa. "Presents," they all shouted as Kushina and Minato laughed at the three youngest before Kushina settled them down and got them to sit around Naruto while she and Minato sat on the sofa opposite them. They watched in fascination as Naruto pulled out 2 scrolls. "Let's start with you, Eiji, and we will go from left to right," he said as Eiji grinned at getting his first while Mina pouted since she was at the end on the right. Rolling the scroll open, a small puff of smoke covered the scroll, and moments later Naruto was sitting there with a wooden box adorned with leaf designs around the edges. He handed it over to Eiji, who eagerly took it. "Open it up," Naruto pushed as Eiji nodded and opened the box up. His sisters and parents leaned in to see what was inside. When it opened, they all looked very surprised, while Eiji looked like Christmas had just came early. Inside the box was 2 rows of 5 3-pronged kunai, just like the type used for his Hiroshin. The only difference was the hole in the center was diamond-shaped instead of a circle, and the hilts had a white handle with blue flames flickering around it. "I saw how much you liked playing with Toussaint's 3-pronged kunai, so I thought you might like a set of your own. The metal is chakra metal, so adding chakra to it will make them stronger. Also, it has a blood seal on the bottom of each set, so later you can add a bit of blood to each one so that only you will ever be able to wield them." Eiji not keep the grin off of his face and hugged his brother for the gift. Minato and Kushina looked at the gift and admired the fine work. They figured it had to be either iron country work or artisan work. "Thank you, Oni-chan," Eiji said as Naruto patted his brother's head. "No problem. I'm sure Tusan will teach you how to use them, he said as Minato nodded and patted Eiji on the head as well, getting a happy smile from the younger Namikaze. Now Mito-chan, he said as Mito looked eager to find out what he got her. Are you still training in Kenjutsu like you said in the letters you sent me? She nodded her head. I am, but I'm not very good at it. I still don't have a sword yet, she said looking down as Kushina stroked her hair. Some people just take more time to learn Kenjutsu than others, Mito-chan. I was the same like you when I was your age, she said as Mito gave her mother a tiny smile. Well, I'm sure myself or Ka-chan can help you with your Kenjutsu whenever you need help, but I think I have the sword problem sorted, he said, getting a wide-eyed look from Mito and Kushina, who both leaned in. Naruto took the other scroll and another puff of smoke engulfed him. When it quickly died down, Mito had stars in her eyes while Kushina examining and nodding at the blade that was in his hands. The sword had a pure white hilt with a circular handguard, and along the side was pieces of diamond-shaped bronze metal. The sheath was pure white, just like the hilt that if it fell into snow, they probably would never find it. Wow, was all Mito could say as Naruto gently placed the blade into her hands. She began to feel the blade all over and gripped the hilt in her hands. She smiled brightly because it felt perfect in her hands. She knew this sword was meant for her. Kushina took a look at it as well and felt how heavy it was, but was surprised that it felt so light. It was a little lighter than her Katetsu and much lighter than Naruto's Shusui. This is a fine blade and it's been beautifully made. Iron Country, she asked Naruto, who nodded. I get most of my supply imported from there since it's the best in my opinion. I had one of their blacksmiths make Mito's sword and Eiji's kunai. This is chakra metal as well, so you can put your chakra or affinity into it if you want. Mito was about to unsheath it, but her mother gave her a stern look. Not in the house. You can unsheath it tomorrow, she said, making Mito pout and groan before she quickly thanked Naruto. Thank you, Naroni-chan. You're welcome. Every swordsman should have a decent blade to wield, he said as Mito just kept fawning over her new katana. And finally little Mina. Mina quickly smiled big as she could not wait for what her gift would be. Tell me, Mina, can you mold chakra now? He asked as Mina bobbed her head up and down. Good, then this gift will be good for you. Am I right in thinking Mito and Eiji have or will have the toad summons? Naruto asked his father as Minato nodded his head, wondering where this was going. Then this is perfect, he called as he bit his finger and placed his hand on the floor. Kuchio no Jutsu. A cloud of smoke engulfed the room as everyone heard furniture getting moved around and the walks creak a little. As the smoke died down, they all looked a little gobsmacked when they saw Kiera sitting in their living room with a giant scroll at her feet. Whoa, the twins said in unison as their parents played with kunai they had hidden in their clothes. Yo, is it time? Kiera asked as she yawned and gave everyone a full look at her massive jaws and pearly white teeth. Yep, this is my little sister Mina. She is the one you are here for, he said as pushed Mina in front of him as the little girl looked nervously at the big tiger in front of her. Mina, this Kiera, my familiar and member of the White Tiger summons. She is here because we would like to know if you would like to become one of their summoners. Naruto said as this family looked at him in surprise. Me? She said squeakily. She knew what summons were and that her father and pervy grandfather had the big toads. Yes, little one. Naruto has managed to convince my mother to allow just one more person to sign the contract. 2 is the max we will allow for someone to summon us, and we would like to make you our second summoner. To make her feel more comfortable, Kiera leaned down and stroked her head against the little red-haired girl. She guessed it worked since Mina giggled a little and stroked her head. Naruto, where did you get your summons? Kushina asked since neither she nor Minato had ever heard of a white tiger summons. They doubted even Jiraiya knew, and he knew most of the summoning types out there. When I was 12 I found Kiera by accident. We became friends and her mother let me sign their contract. I am the first person to ever become a summoner for the White Tigers. And now hopefully Mina will become the second if she wants to. Naruto turned to look at Mina as did everyone else as they waited for her answer. After a few moments Mina gave him a big smile and nodded her head. Naruto smiled back and took the scroll from Kiera and opened it up in front of Mina. Okay, Mina-chan, I need you to make your index finger bleed a little so you can write your name in this column beside my name. Then have a bit of blood on each fingertip of the hand you want to summon with and put the handprint under the name. Mina nodded and bit into her right index finger. She quickly wrote her name and then bit each of her other fingers and made the hand print on the scroll. When she was done, the scroll glowed a little before poofing away. And there you go. Now I will show you how to do the hand signs for it another time since we want to make sure you have enough chakra to summon your familiar. I can do that for you now though, Naruto said before summoning another tiger as a little puff of smoke appeared on the floor. Mina's eyes were like sparkles when she saw a small tiger cub that only came up to her knee on the floor in front of her. Its big blue eyes blinked as it looked at its new surroundings. Mina, this is Kovu, Kiara's little brother, and he is now your summoning familiar. Treat him well. Hello, Kovu said in a squeaky voice as Mina gently picked him up into her arms. The two stared at each other until Kovu started licking Mia's nose, which made her start laughing at how ticklish it felt. Why do we have to get stupid toads? Tigers look so cool, Eiji and Mito said, crying anime tear inwardly as Kushina and Minato were smiling at how happy their youngest daughter looked. As Kiara returned to the summoning realm, Mito, Eiji and Minato went to Mina, who was happily playing with Kovu, and greeted the new young summon while Kushina stood beside her eldest and kissed the top of his head. Thank you. They are my little brother and sisters. There is nothing in the world I would not do for them, and that includes you and Tu-san. I know I never really said it before I left, so I will say it to you now, he said as he took his mother's hand into his while Minato looked at them from the corner of his eye. It's okay, Ka-chan. I forgive you and I hope I can have a better relationship with you now. This is why I want to give you something. Kushina's eyes shot up in surprise, as did Minato's, as they watched Naruto pull out one last scroll. She wanted to hug her son to death for finally saying the words telling them that he forgave them for their foolishness. Know that I am giving you this, Ka-chan, because I want you to finally make peace with yourself, he said as unsealed the object inside the scroll. When the object appeared, Kushina immediately threw back her hands to cover her mouth as uncontrollable sobs began to sound out, making everyone look at her. Minato went to support his wife while the younger three children stood beside her. They all looked down and saw what Naruto was holding. It was a katana with a dark purple handle with bronze diamonds going down the side of it and a circular handguard. Ryujin Jaka. Kushina whispered as Minato's eye went wide at now, realizing that this was her father's blade. Where? How? During my time with the Guardians, the daimyo gave me a week rest since we had been having a rough few months from attempted attacks on him. I decided to go visit Uzushiogakure since it's where our ancestors are from. Gigi told me about Aji-san and about your argument with him before he passed. When I visited Yuzu, I went into what looked like some kind of kage building since it looked similar to the one we have. At the back office there was a trap door underneath the desk. When I went down I saw seals placed around a cabinet. When I managed to break the seals I found Ryujin Jaka. Apparently after the fall of Yuzu, some of the Uzumaki survivors went back and buried their dead. Aji-san was buried by a tree that he apparently proposed to Oba-san at while his sword was sealed in a stasis. Only an Uzumaki could break the seals that were placed on it. Naruto stood up and then held it out towards Kushina. I know I never met him, but I think he would want you to have it. Now your peace with him can finally be made. Kushina just sobbed harder as she listened to her son. She reached forward and took the legendary sword in her hands and clutched it tight to her. It was the last thing she had left of her father, and in a way Naruto had given a piece of him back to her. She then surged forward, hugging Naruto close as she cried and showering his cheeks with her motherly kisses. I love you, I love you, I love you so much. Kushina said over and over again, not being able to thank her son enough. I love you too, Ka-chan, and I always will, Naruto said as he hugged his mother in a happy embrace. He motioned for the others to come over, and very quickly Minato, Eiji, Mito and Mina, who was still carrying Kovu, all wrapped their arms around Kushina and had a family hug. As they hugged, Naruto closed his eyes and felt the chakra signatures of the people of Konoha. I'm home. Chapter 21. I miss this bed, Naruto muttered happily as he laid on his large bed and rolled around on top of the covers as he wore his sleepwear. Since returning a few days ago, he had been given some time off since he just returned from the Guardians and had been enjoying seeing everyone again. Tsunade, Hiruzen, and Shizen had pretty much locked him down in the Sarutobi manor as they wanted to know everything that happened while he was away and all the new stuff that he learned. Though when they got to how his Mokuton was developing, he simply tapped his nose. That is a secret. After that he went to see Mikoto, who hugged him near to death, having missed her student greatly, and did the same with him that the others did and pushed him for information. He saw little Ria, who looked exactly like Mikoto, that it was frightening. Though Sasuke had seen him once and snorted before walking away towards his compound's training ground, he guessed Itachi's little brother still had that stick shoved up his ass, though he was a little bummed out that neither Anko nor Itachi were around. Both were out on missions, as was Hana and Yugao. Both girls had advanced in his time away, with Hana being a Jonin now. Yugao joined the Umbu and was under Itachi's command. Though when he asked Mikoto where Itachi was, Mikoto just giggled into her hand and said he was busy with another personal matter and did not go into any detail. Seeing it was around 11 o'clock and that he had slept in enough for one day, Naruto got up and went to enjoy his breakfast. Cereal or toast? He wondered aloud before going with cereal. With his breakfast in hand, he sat down at the table. Just as he was about to take a bite, the door slammed pen and two figures came barreling in. It took every ounce of willpower he had not to blush, because what he was looking at was probably the hottest scene he had ever seen in his life. Enko, who had gown a little taller and was definitely more womanly than before, had kicked the door open and was locking lips with none other than Hana Inuzuka, who, like Enko, had grown taller, was more womanly, and had grown out her hair into a long ponytail that went down her back. Neither girls even noticed he was there sitting at the table, since both were too preoccupied with feeling each other's bodies. Enko threw her tanned coat off before she growled and ripped Hana's top off her body, revealing white tape around her breasts. Enko quickly ripped those off before her hands began fondling the Inuzuka's breasts. Hana moaned loudly before she felt Enko twist them around and pushed her onto the table, where Enko then bit down on her breasts, making a wave of pleasure hit her. After a moment of playing with Hana's breasts, Enko took her top off and began trailing down her body and was about to pull off her pants when Naruto finally voiced up. "What do you know? Breakfast and a show." Both girls stopped completely and snapped their eyes open. They scanned in front of them and saw Naruto looking at them with a smile as he raised a spoonful of cereal at them before eating it. After a moment of not saying anything, both girls screamed. One in shock and one in joy. Hana got off the table and quickly wrapped her arms around her breasts, trying to cover herself before grabbing a cushion from the sofa. Enko meanwhile had lunged over the table and pressed herself against her best friend and hugged him tightly. Naruto could feel Enko's wonderful assets practically smacking him in the face. Enko still didn't know how to be subtle. "You bastard, when did you get back? You don't know how much we've missed you," she said as she leaned out and looked at him with a watery smile. "Just a few days ago. I guess you guys were on a mission." "Hello, by the way, Hana-chan." "Hey Naruto," Hana said, chuckling nervously as she scratched the back of her head. "If I knew you were coming back, I would have stayed." "You should have told us," Enko said as she broke the hug but did not get off his lap. "Sorry, but I wanted it to be a surprise. My family was happy to see me, as was Sensei and everyone else. Now I'm just looking for that Uchiha we all know and love." "Aw yeah, good ol' Itachi. I'm sure you will see him at some point. He's not here much other than to sleep, and when he is not at the Umbu station or on patrol, then he would be at the Uchiha compound, since he is the heir." "Still as stoic as ever?" Naruto asked. "Of course, this is Itachi after all. Though you will be getting a surprise when you see him," she said, making him look at her in confusion, but knew Enko was not going to spill the beans. He was wondering what she and his sensei were hiding. "So you too, huh?" "Must admit, Enko, I am not surprised since I saw this coming, but you, Hana? I did not know you swayed that way." "I didn't until a year ago. Enko got me drunk after a successful mission and we spent the night together. I remembered most of it and I found myself enjoying it. So we hooked up more and more until eventually we just decided to become girlfriends." Hana said as she took Enko's hand into hers, making Enko smile at her. "It's not a problem, is it?" she asked as Naruto shook his head. "No, Hana-chan, it's no problem. I am very happy you two found love with one another." "How is your mother taking this relationship anyway?" "She took it pretty well, actually. Shocked at first, as you would expect, but she said as long as one day I can give her a grand pup to spoil by some means, then she is all for it. In fact, a lot of my clan are okay with it, as are a lot of the other shinobi, and we have not had many people act hatefully towards us, which is very fortunate. The only person who is being a pain is my runt of a brother Kiba." Naruto snorted. "That's probably because you landed a hot piece of ass like Enko where he didn't," he said as Enko grinned and gave them a thumbs up. "Damn right. So do you have a girl in your life, Naruto? You must by now." Enko asked as Naruto shook his head. "No, not right now. There was a girl or two that caught my eye, I guess you could say, but nothing came of them." Naruto lied as Enko shook her head. "Well, hurry up and get one unless you were hoping to get a go on this again," Enko said as she pointed to her body. "Sorry Naruto, but I'm Hana's now. I am heartbroken, Enko-chan, but I think I will survive. Good now, it's been great seeing you again and I am glad you are home, but it's been a week since I last had sex and I got to get my desires out," Enko said as Hana yelped beside her as Enko picked her up in a fireman's carry before slapping her ass. You might want to leave since we won't be stopping until tomorrow morning, Anko shouted as she ran down the hallway and went into her room. And that is my cue to leave, he said as he quickly finished his breakfast, got a fresh change of clothes and left the apartment just as Hana's moans began to echo through the house. That's it my Hibiheim, put it right there. With Naruto. Since he did not have much to do, Naruto made his way towards his parents' house where he knew the twins would currently be. Since the twins both graduated, they had a week off from the academy until they had to go back to find out what teams they were going to be. While both wanted to be with one another, Naruto did not think that was a good idea. They both needed to learn to be independent and grow without the other always beside them. He knew for twins that was a difficult process and a hard one, but it was necessary in the world of being a shinobi. Walking up towards the Namikaze household, he could sense that both his parents were out and that Mina was currently at the academy. Mito, Ag, you guys here? He called out, and very quickly a torped blonde slammed into him. Ni-chan. Mito called happily as she hugged her brother while Ag came out of the kitchen at a more sedated pace. Well, you seem happy to see me. What's the occasion? His sister looked up at him with sparkles in her eyes. Ka-chan has been teaching me some really cool techniques with the sword you got me. Really? Well, that is good. How are these kunai coming along, Ag? He asked as his little brother gave him a thumbs up. Good. Tusan is showing me how to use them in his spare time. I think I am getting the hang of them. That's very good as well. I'm glad you are both using the gifts I gave you. If you are not doing anything, do you two want to go to one of the training grounds with me? I want to see just how far along my cute little brother and sister has come in their shinobi skills. Unless you're scared to battle me, that is, he said, taunting them a little, and internally grinned when he saw Mito and Ag get a passionate fire in their eyes. Hell no, we can kick your ass and san, both twins shouted at him as they raced upstairs to put on their shinobi uniform and gather their equipment. They are too easy. Naruto muttered but smiled all the same. They might have been twins, but you could see how different they could be when you watched them closely. Ag was the calmer of the two and was more of a thinker, just like Minato was. Meanwhile, Mito was a little hot-headed but very spirited, just like Kushina. Though those two combined, and you could have a strong little duo on their hands. Leaning against the wall, he waited a few minutes as he listened to Mito and Ag get ready, as both shouted out what to bring with them and what not to forget. It was not very stealthy of them, since they were both now 13 years old and were among the oldest in their years, since few others were still only 12. Mito and Ag now had separate rooms. Ag kept their original room while Mito was given his old room. After a few minutes, both twins came barreling down the stairs equipped and ready, and proudly wore their new headbands on their heads. Ag was wearing dark blue pants and black shinobi sandals while wearing a gray mesh top and a whitish-gray jacket over it. He had his kunai holder strapped to his right leg that contained his new 3-pronged kunai. On the side of his jacket was the Uzumaki symbol. Mito meanwhile had her long blonde hair tied into a braid while her bangs framed her face. She wore black shinobi sandals with black bottoms along with a dark orange shirt with black outlines with a light mesh shirt underneath. On her back was her new katana along with the Uzumaki symbol. Orange? Interesting color. Naruto commented, since it was certainly a bold color to go out in. Don't you start too, I like it and that is how it will stay, she pouted, and Naruto put his hands up as a sign of surrender. It's fine. It looks very nice, he said as he opened the door and ushered them both out. Ni-chan, won't you need your gear? Ag said, since Naruto was only wearing civilian clothes. Don't worry Ag, I won't be needing it, he said playfully, which only made the twins want to kick his ass even more. As they walked, all the civilians smiled as they watched the twins tell Naruto how badly they were going to beat him, while Naruto just let a little grin stay on his face the entire time. Training Ground 11. Here we are, this should do nicely. Naruto muttered as he looked around at the spacious field as Mito and Ag stood a little in front of him. No one else was using this training field, so it meant they could use the entire width of it. Now are you both ready for this? Naruto asked as both nodded. Well, since you two have just turned genin, to make this a bit fairer I will only use taijutsu and kenjutsu. You two though can use whatever tricks you want, he said as both nodded again. I want you both to treat me like an enemy. If you don't come at me with the intent to kill, then you might as well walk home now, he said in all seriousness as both gulped but muttered a small yes. Good, he spoke as he went to his right hand and unsealed a katana neither of the twins had seen before. It had a green handle and a guard with a 4-petal design, while the sheath had green on one half and white on the other. I have never seen that one before, Ni-chan. Is it new? Mito asked as she looked over the blade with curious eyes. That's right. It was a gift the fire daimyo had made for me just before my time as one of the guardians was up. As a way of thanking me for my service and for protecting his family, he presented me with this katana he had made from Iron Country, just like your weapons and my shusui. I have had some practice with it, but I think it would be better to use now than shusui. Trust me when I say shusui is not a blade you two are ready to go against yet, he said as both gulped. You both ready? He asked as both Mito and Eiji got in their fighting stances and Mito threw her sword out while Eiji readied two tri-pronged kunai in his hands. The wind breezed through the field as Naruto stood there with one hand in his pocket while the other was clutching his new blade Shigure. He smiled as Mito and Eiji narrowed their eyes at him. Begin. Not surprisingly, Mito was the first to go forward and came towards him at high genin level speed. She swung her blade down at Naruto, who easily sidestepped out of the way. She swung at him again, but this time he ducked the slash and stepped out of the way again. The next strike though, Naruto spun and went behind Mito and gave her a light whack on the back of the leg with the sheath of Shigure. Mito stumbled forward a little when he did. Moments later he sensed Eiji coming from behind him with his kunai poised towards him. Naruto easily moved out of the way and grabbed his younger brother's arms before throwing him in the air in the direction he was aiming at. Eiji though managed to flip in the air and land on his feet. Eiji threw a few standard kunai at him, but Naruto easily blocked them with his blade, which at this point was still sheathed. Sensing Mito coming from behind him, he jumped into air, dodging a sword strike before landing next to her, grabbing her shoulder and throwing her over to Eiji. Eiji now threw a couple of shuriken at Naruto, who simply caught the shuriken in between his fingers. Meanwhile, Eiji caught his sister in his arms and set her on her feet as Mito huffed out in annoyance and rubbed her shoulder. Together? Eiji asked his sister, who nodded. Together. Now both twins came at him as they went in and out in a zigzag pattern, obviously trying to confuse him about who was going to strike first. He was not surprised when he saw it was Mito first, who again tried to take him down with her blade. Naruto though sent a smirk her way before blocking the strike with the sheath of his blade and twisted her around before he poked her in the back pretty hard with the sheath, making her tumble forward again. Grinning at his little sister as she fell to the ground and pouted at him, he quickly saw Eiji appear a couple of meters above him, making a few hand signs. Raitun, Raikyu. Eiji called as a ball of lightning about the size of his fists formed in between his hands. He stabilized the jutsu quickly before he fired the ball of lightning towards Naruto. Lightning affinity, huh? Naruto thought, since he expected Eiji to have either wind or water, but he guessed that was not the case. Eiji and Mito grinned, thinking they had their older brother, but the look was quickly wiped away when they saw an aura of wind wrap around their brother Katana before he made a single slash towards the ball of lightning. The slash cut the ball in half and caused it to dissipate. As Eiji was coming down, Naruto appeared in front of him and landed a strike to his gut with the handle of his katana, causing Eiji to become winded. Before Naruto could lay another strike on him, Mito appeared behind now with her katana sheathed and about to engage him in taijutsu. Alright little sister, show me what you can do. Mito focused on her older brother before she began throwing punches and swift kicks towards him. She aimed for the point that her mother had told would do the most damage, which was the head, stomach and chest areas. However, she became increasingly frustrated when Naruto either dodged the strikes or caught them. Stop dodging all the time, Mito said, getting more and more frustrated without noticing that her strikes were getting slower and sloppier. She was getting so mad that she did not notice Naruto setting up a wire strap around her. Mito, pay attention to what he is doing, Eiji called, since he just noticed what Naruto was doing. What? Mito called in confusion before suddenly she became weightless and was hanging upside down in a tree. As she tried to attack Naruto, she did not notice that he had led her over towards a tree and was subtly wrapping a ninja wire trap around it. Oh, so that's what you meant, Mito said as she gave a nervous grin as she scratched the back of her head. You need to pay more attention to your surroundings, Naruto said as he poked his sister in the stomach, causing a small giggle to come from her. Meanie, she said as she crossed her arms before her eyes widened when a flurry of shurikens suddenly came out of nowhere and struck Naruto in the back, making him fall forward. Oni-chan, Mito called out as she watched her brother fall to the ground as Eiji looked a little gobsmacked. He did not think that it was actually going to hit. However, before either could do anything, Naruto suddenly poofed away, revealing that it was just a clone. A bunshin? They both said, realizing that it was a trick. Yep, and you fell for it, little brother, Naruto said, appearing behind Eiji. His little brother reacted as quickly as he could as his tri-pronged kunai surged towards his brother. However, Naruto quickly grabbed his arm and twisted it behind him and pinned him to the ground as he sat on top of him. You did not think it would be that easy, did you? He said as he patted his brother's head as Eiji gave him a pout and a small glare. It only made Naruto chuckle more. Not bad for the first round. Naruto said as he got up, freeing Eiji and throwing a kunai towards where Mito was strung up. The wire snapped and Mito fell comically to the ground, making her yelp. "Oh, Ane-chan!" Mito shouted angrily as she glared at him as a bump appeared on her head. The Ka-chan flows strong in this one. Naruto muttered, making Eiji laugh and Mito to glare at him more. Eiji quickly went back over to his sister as they tried to formulate some kind of plan against their brother. Well, at least they have teamwork down, he thought as he began unsheathing Shigeru and revealing to Eiji and Mito the cold hard steel of his blade. "Right, you two. Since round 1 is over, let's go on to round 2, he said as both Mito and Eiji gulped as they readied themselves. An hour later. "I can't feel my legs," Eiji called out as he lied on the ground beside Mito, looking exhausted with a few bruises and cuts covering his body and with a few tear marks in his clothes. Mito was in a similar state. Despite being Uzumaki's and having amazing stamina, their brother was too much like their Ka-chan when they trained with her. Ruthless. They looked up to see Naruto looking the same as he did earlier, not even looking winded and without a scratch on him as he grinned down at the twins. "We hate you," they both said as Naruto laughed. "Well, I love you guys too," he chirped as sat down right in between them and placed his hands on their heads. They watched as Naruto activated the Shosen Jutsu and began healing them. Both felt a lot better than they did moments ago. "So how did we do?" Mito asked nervously as Naruto looked at her critically before smiling. "You two did pretty good actually. You lasted longer than I thought you would and your skills are definitely up to genin level. You both have a decent-sized jutsu arsenal for one's your age, and while your taijutsu and kenjutsu could use some work, I think you two are well on your way to being great shinobi," he said, making both of them smile at him for the praise. "But I do have some advice for you. Eiji, try not to overthink every situation. If your gut is telling you to do something, then most times it's right. Sometimes you need to take risks instead of always playing it safe," he said as Eiji nodded, since Kushina had told him the same thing some time before. "Mito, you need to work on that temper of yours. The more frustrated you get, the slower and sloppier your moves get. Try and stay calm even if someone is taunting you," he said as he flicked her nose before said girl smiled up at him. After a few minutes, Naruto stopped the Shosen Jutsu and both twins stood up. They still felt exhausted and could not wait to just go to bed and rest, but they looked fine now, so he would not get chewed out by Kushina. "You guys want me to walk you both home?" he asked, but both shook their heads saying they knew the way and that it would not take long. After saying their goodbyes and a few hugs, Eiji and Mito left the area and headed home. As Naruto watched them go and saw them disappeared from sight, Naruto turned around. "You can come out now." He felt a fast approaching familiar signature heading straight towards him. Gripping his blade tightly, Naruto spun around and intercepted the person as a Tonto struck forward. Shigeru lay in between them as it blocked the strike. The person was an Umbu with a raven mask and long black hair that was tied into a thick ponytail behind him. It was not difficult for Naruto to figure out who it was. "Nice to see you have not got sloppy while I was away, Itachi." "The same could be said for you," Naruto spoke in his usual monotone voice, though there was an edge of happiness to it at seeing his longtime friend. Unlocking weapons, Itachi took his mask off and an older Itachi was looking back at him. The only difference was the tear-shaped marks on his face were a little deeper than before. The two smiled and hugged one another. "I heard you have been back for a few days. I saw Kaa-san a few hours ago and she told me about your return." "Yeah, Mikoto-sensei was one of the first I went to see too. Little Ria has grown up well. She looks just like sensei," he said as Itachi nodded happily. "Ria-chan has grown up beautifully just like Kaa-san. I am afraid I may end up beating away boys with a stick," Itachi said as he did not like the fact that boys would gain interest in her in a few years. "Ah, don't worry. I'm sure Ria will be tough enough to keep them away. Besides, I am the one with two sisters here, both of which are going to be beautiful as well. 2 sticks will be required. Though, I see little Sasuke's mood has not changed." Itachi just sighed as he shook his head about his little brother. "I don't know what to do with him. He has clearly taken after my father more than my mother, and his obsession with one day defeating me and taking over as clan head has become his life goal now. He says that the Uchiha needs to be feared and everyone must bow down to us like we are royalty. He has been getting out of hand lately." "How is he towards Ria?" Naruto asked, since he remembers before he left Sasuke was very hostile towards his younger sister. It's not too bad now since Ria mostly stays away from him, or myself and Ka-san are close, which stops him from trying anything hostile towards her. He rarely speaks to anyone and doesn't have many friends due to isolating himself. Though from the few conversations I have had with Eiji, Sasuke may have a bit of an obsession with Mito. You don't say. Naruto, as his eye narrowed as Itachi nodded a little reluctantly. Eiji has told me that he stares at her a lot in class as well as out of the academy. At home Sasuke mumbles about needing a strong wife and children one day and about marriage contracts. I think he has Mito in mind as a future spouse. No offense here Itachi, but if the only reason Sasuke wants to marry a girl, especially my little sister, because he only wants a strong wife and someone to pop out children for him, then he and I are going to have a problem. Yes, I know, I will make sure he knows those are not good reasons to go into a marriage. Ka-san is too soft with him sometimes since she wants to think he is just her little baby still. But someone needs to be tough with him. If he steps out of line again, then I may have to be the one to push him back. Makes sense, Naruto said as they walked beside one another as they chatted about what they had been up to, and the topic of Danzo came up briefly. While the old war hawk had not tried anything yet, Itachi had been keeping a very close eye on him, and the minute he slipped up he would act. Itachi Uchiha, where have you been? A loud voice called, and Naruto saw to his surprise Itachi go a little pale and gulp. Naruto turned around, as did Itachi, a little reluctantly, to see a young woman standing behind them. She was a fair-skinned girl around average height with green eyes and waist-length black hair in a Heim-style cut tied in a high ponytail with short bangs and chin-length strands framing her face. She was wearing regular clothing with dark gray pants and a light green shirt that matched her eyes. Though Naruto could tell she was a shinobi by the way she held herself. Oh Kami, how did she find me? Itachi whispered. I have been looking for you everywhere. Stop running off all the time. You and I are taking Ria to the park, remember, and then we are getting ice cream, she said, closing the gap between them, and to Naruto's complete shock she grabbed Itachi by the collar and kissed him. Naruto almost dropped to the ground in surprise. He watched Itachi kiss back a little before they broke apart. Itachi turned to look at his friend, who was looking at them with a WTF face. Dude, the hell was that, and who is this? Naruto asked as he wondered if this was what Mikoto and Enko had both meant earlier. Naruto, allow me to introduce you to Shizuka, my girlfriend, his fiancée and future wife. Shizuka said proudly as she stuck out her hand to greet Naruto, who shook back in a daze as he just looked at Itachi, who had a tinge of red on his cheeks. After a few seconds of silence, Naruto quickly broke as laughter came out of his mouth and he fell to the ground, and pointing at his friend. The emotionless Itachi Uchiha, who always said he would not get a girlfriend until he was 25, is now engaged at 18, Naruto laughed as he struggled to breath. Shizuka raised an eyebrow while Itachi gained a tick mark on his head. Shut up, Naruto! Itachi shouted, which only made Naruto laugh more. Grumbling about blonde-haired Baka's, Itachi grabbed Shizuka's hand and the two walked away as Naruto chased after them after he finally stopped laughing so he could get the whole story. That evening, walking towards his apartment and hoping Hana and Enko had finally stopped their love-making, Naruto mused over his day and could not help but smile at his friend Itachi. The story went that Itachi was out on a mission 6 months ago and he came across Shizuka, who challenged him to a battle. Itachi tried to get away, but Shizuka left him with little choice. They fought and Itachi won. It was only afterwards that Shizuka dropped the bombshell on his that she was from the Nadeshiko village. Since Itachi defeated her, their law depicted that Itachi had to marry her. Not knowing what to do, he went back to Konoha with her to get this sorted out. He went to Mikoto, who immediately began questioning the girl, but to his annoyance an hour later Shizuka and Mikoto were laughing and drinking tea with one another, with Mikoto telling him to marry this girl right now. Not only that, but even Ria and the other Uchihas that remained liked the girl since she was very spirited and could lay down the law. Seeing no way out of it, Itachi came up with a compromise. Since they were too young in his mind to get married, he said that he and Shizuka would be in a relationship with one another for at least a year to get to know one another and to see if that spark was there. Shizuka was skeptical but went along with it, though after the months, despite Shizuka being a very confrontational kind of woman, Itachi began budding feelings for her and vice versa. Naruto was happy for his friend for finding love in the most unlikely places or situations. Plus he liked Shizuka. She was very bubbly, though could be a little clingy to Itachi. She was a strong kunoichi and was a jonin in her own right. Plus apparently his father and the village were okay with it, since it meant the heir of the Uchiha found his future wife and the relationship would better relations between Konoha and the Nadeshiko village. All in all, he thought it would be a good fit since with every strong man was an equally strong woman to keep him in line. His own parents were fact of that. Speaking of his father, he could sense his father still in the Hokage office. Since it was unlike him to be there this late, Naruto shunshined and arrived in the Hokage office. He found Minato sitting at his desk as he had a roster of Jonin and the new Genin in his hands. Minato looked up and smiled at his eldest. "Hey Naruto, what are you doing here so late? I was actually going to ask you the same thing." Minato held up the two rosters. "I'm trying to finalize the new teams for the Genin. Something just does not sit right with me about them." Naruto quirked an eyebrow up. "You want some help?" he asked as Minato looked at him in surprise before nodding. Pulling up a chair, he looked the team over. The first half were the civilian-born who he knew would most likely not be passing the Genin secondary exam. With the amount of clan heirs there were this year, he knew the council would be pushing for them to pass. He looked them over and stopped when he saw his mother's name. He showed it to his father, who just sighed. "Your mother was very adamant about this. She said with the whole masked man being out there, Mito needs to be safe at all times. She wants to be the twins' Jonin sensei for that sake. And what do you think? I'm not against the idea, but putting them both on the same team would make it look like we are playing favorites. Your mother is the strongest kunoichi in the village, rivaled only by Tsunade and Mikoto." Naruto bit his lip as he looked them over. He guessed he could see the logic in that, but again he did not think the twins always had to be with one another. They needed to learn how to act separately rather than always being together. "Can I make suggestion?" he said as Minato nodded. "By all means do. It would be nice to get a second opinion on this." "Then I think you should split the twins up," he said as Minato looked a little surprised. "They might be twins, but their fighting is much different. Eiji is a more technical fighter while Mito is a head-on close combat type. Mito is a mix of a brawled and Ka-chan's style while Eiji is like a mix between you and Kakashi. This is what I think you should do," he said as he began mixing some of the names around in the roster. For about an hour Naruto and Minato sat discussing the teams as well as mixing them around. All from whether or not the second Gen Inoshikacho trio was a good idea and who they thought could survive Kushina, which made them both laugh. They were both so into what they were doing that neither noticed Kushina peeking through the door and laugh and gaze adoringly as her husband and eldest bonded before she quietly sneaked off back home. Chapter 22. Student versus Teacher. "Do you both have everything you need for this morning?" Naruto asked Mito and Eiji as he enjoyed his breakfast round at his parents' house. It was not often that he ate breakfast at his parents' house anymore, despite Kushina always telling him to be over every day. The twins looked ready to burst into hysterics as both nodded eagerly, Mito especially, and could barely contain her excitement. Next to him, Mina ate her toast as she listened to her older brother and sister talk about all the cool things they were going to now that they were shinobi, while Naruto just laughed at how the twins thought they were going to go out saving princesses. They are going to be heartbroken, Naruto thought, since all genin had to submit to the torturous D ranks. It was like a coming-of-age requirement, especially that hell cat Tora. Naruto got shudders at the thought of that cat. "Are you sure you both have everything? It would not be wise to leave anything behind, especially on team assignment day," Kushina prodded, repeating Naruto's question as she fought back a smirk. Only a few people were aware that Kushina was taking another team, and Naruto wondered how Mito would take it. Since they were similar in fighting styles, Mito would thrive under their mother's tutelage, since now that she was a genin, she could really learn the good stuff now. "We have everything, Ka-chan," the twins both said in unison. Thought it sounded like they were more annoyed since Kushina had asked them 3 times already. "I'm just making sure it sinks in. I want my babies to be prepared for what's to come," she said as stood behind the twins and kissed the tops of their heads, making them both pout. "We are not babies anymore, Ka-chan," they said in unison again, making Kushina laugh and Naruto and Mina smile. "You are always going to be my babies no matter how old you get," she said, stroking the tops of their heads, making their pouts disappear as soft smiles now graced their faces. "It's almost 11. You two better get going. Remember, be nice to your teammates, do not complain who you are with, and do not disobey your sensei's orders, understand?" Naruto told them as both nodded and quickly hopped out of their chairs. Both wore their uniforms from their day sparring with Naruto and had their gifts from him strapped to their bodies while they had their headbands wore proudly on their foreheads. "Get going, munchkins," he said as they both hugged him from his seat before going over to Mina, who gave them both sloppy good luck kisses. Then after their hug with Kushina, who held them both in a hug for nearly half a minute, they both went towards the front door and left the house. "They grow up way too fast," Kushina muttered since 3 of her 4 babies were now shinobi. She turned to look at her youngest. Don't grow up too quickly, Mina-chan, she asked as Mina giggled and kissed her mother's nose. Okay, Ka-chan, Mina said, making Kushina laugh, and began to gush over her youngest before she sent her upstairs to wash. Leaving just her and Naruto in the room, she began making her own breakfast since she didn't need to be at the Hokage's office until 11:30, giving her a bit of time with her eldest. She sat down just off to the side of him and watched as he finished his breakfast and pulled out a little pocketbook from his pocket. He pulled out a brush and began writing and drawing in it. Kushina bit into her toasts and leaned over. What are you doing, sweetie? You look like you're concentrating hard, she said, trying to look at the page. Naruto chuckled. It's a little sealing book. It just has stuff on sealing and ideas of potential sealing jutsu I come up with. I'm currently working on one at the moment and hopefully it will prove to be a success. He now had his mother full attention. Anything to do with Fuinjutsu, then her attention was yours. What's the idea? Let me see, she said, trying to look at the page, though Naruto kept moving it out of the way. Kushina pouted and started climbing over her son to try and get to the book. Just to annoy her some more, Naruto stood up and put the book above his head. Since his mother was not very tall, she immediately growled in annoyance before she took a few steps back and used the chair to vault herself. She slammed into Naruto and as she went down grabbed the book. She said in triumph and quickly began looking at what he was currently working on while Naruto pouted besides her. No fair, Ka-chan, he said while Kushina stuck her tongue out at him. As he sat back up, Kushina's eyes began gliding over the page. It was piquing her interest more and more since she saw that the current seal design had traits of a trap seal along with an attack, defense, and sensing seal incorporated into it. She tried to figure out what it was, but she was coming up blank. What is this exactly? She asked since she was very curious over it. Naruto, who finally sat up, scratched the back of his head. Well, I know that for a kunoichi one of the worst traumas is rape while out on a mission. So lately I have been trying to develop an anti-rape seal, he said as Kushina looked at him in surprise. Rape was the fear of every kunoichi all over the world. Having it taken from them by force stayed with them for life, and Kushina knew many past kunoichi that unfortunately had that unfortunate experience. It caused some to quit while others took their lives from the shame of it. It works like this, he said as he took the book from Kushina. The seal has chakra poured into it and is then marked over the woman's virginal area. If an enemy shinobi tried to enter her forcefully, then the seal will pick it up. With the sensing seal incorporated into it, it can sense whether they have good or bad intentions. If they have bad intentions, then the attack and defense seal part of it will activate. The defense will create a thin layer of chakra to protect her womanhood, while the attack seal sends out a sharp pulse of chakra which should in theory dismember him of his manhood, Naruto said as Kushina looked at her soon in amazement. Her looks went from Naruto to the seal, then back to Naruto. This seal could be revolutionary for kunoichi everywhere. This could change everything for us, she thought. How did no one think of this before? The concept is so simple, and with the right skills in Fuinjutsu it could be very possible. She had to tell Minato about this later since he would be feeling the exact same thing towards him. What do you think? He asked as Kushina gave him a proud look. Naruto, this is incredible. You could potentially have a seal that protects women everywhere. This seal is simply incredible, and it shows how far you have progressed in Fuinjutsu. What level are you at, because this work is as good as it gets? Naruto blushed a little at the compliment but answered her question. I'm halfway through level 8, he said, and once again Kushina was gobsmacked. Level 8? I only reached level 8 by the time I was 20. At this rate he is going to surpass both Minato and I when it comes to Fuinjutsu, she thought as the proud look on her face just grew even more. What else do you have in here? I would like to hear some more of your ideas, Kushina said as Naruto smiled at her and huddled closer as they went through the book. Hour later. Naruto walked down the path and wore his shinobi gear as he walked towards the Chunin exam arena. He had gotten a letter from Hiruzen just after he left his parents' home telling him to come to the Chunin Stadium at this time and to not be late. His interest piqued and Naruto was curious to what his Gigi wanted. He spent a good 20 minutes with his mother talking about Fuinjutsu, and he could see she was deeply impressed with his work and his ideas. She gave him some advice with a few of them and told him a few variant seals that would work better to create other seals, something he listened to closely. When it came to seals, his mother surpassed even his father in that regard. She was a true Uzumaki when it came to Fuinjutsu, with the only person who could surpass her was Mito Uzumaki, the Shodaime wife. She told him that if he ever needed help then he was always welcome to ask her for either help or to run ideas by her. Coming up with new Fuinjutsu was like porn for an Uzumaki. She is probably at the Hokage office right now getting ready to welcome her new team, Naruto thought, since Kushina looked quite excited at the prospect of having a second team. Though internally she was doing it to gloat that she had more teams than Mikoto. Their rivalry was never going to end. Approaching the Chunin Stadium, Naruto went on inside through the open doors which he guessed were left open just for him and began walking up the stairs towards the setting area. Once he entered he saw the giant field in the center of the stadium. It looked just like the training grounds and had a rocky terrain with trees, grass and a pool of water in it, making it an ideal training location. Though he stopped in his spot and could not help but let a grin appear on his face when he looked down at the center of the field. Standing dead center in the field was the Sandaime Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi, decked out in his full battle gear with a concentrated look on his face. Despite his age, the man was intimidating as ever and Naruto could feel the power that radiated for him. He jumped from the stadium and landed a few meters in front of Hiruzen. "I take it you want that spar we promised one another now?" Naruto said as it was now Hiruzen's turn to smirk. "It is. I want to see just how far you have come in these 3 years, Naruto. I have been eagerly waiting for the moment to take you on one-on-one like this, and I don't plan on taking it easy on you like I did when you were younger." Naruto's grin stayed on his face as he took off his jacket and threw it to the side, revealing his muscled and powerful arms. "Gigi, I would not have it any other way," he said as Naruto and Hiruzen began doing a few stretches. "Are both warriors ready?" a loud voice called out as Naruto looked over to see Tsunade standing in the Kage box with a grin on her face. She had wanted to see this match for a long time as well and hoped she would get her turn against her student in due time as well. Naruto gave her a nod and thumbs up, which Hiruzen gave her as well. "In that case, get ready," she said as Naruto and Hiruzen both got in their taijutsu stances and both now had a focused look on their faces as they examined each other's stances. From up top on the stands, two Chunin, Izumo and Kotetsu, who were currently off duty, saw the doors to the stadium open and went to check it out. They saw Sandaime Hokage and the son of the Yondaime about to square off with the slug Sannin being the proctor of the match. They both had one thing in their minds. "We need to tell everyone," they said before making a few clones each and began spreading the word of this to the entire village. "I think we are going to have company," Naruto said as he quickly took a few kunais with barrier tags stuck to the bottom and set them around the arena. A thick blue barrier erected around the field to try and keep damage and attacks contained as best as they could. Once up, Naruto turned back to look at Hiruzen. After a few calm and silent moments, Tsunade's voice sounded out. "Begin." Both Hiruzen and Naruto shot off from their spots at extreme speed and slammed their fists against one another, making a strong shockwave suddenly hit the area as the teacher and student began to battle. Academy. Mito Uzumaki Namikaze sat proudly as she sat beside her best friend Ino Yamanaka and had her blade from Naruto resting in her lap. The two chatted about trivial things and listened as Ino began saying who she would like to be with team-wise and hoping they were not complete bakas. But she noticed her friend kept glancing over towards her brother. It was no secret, at least to Mito anyway, that Ino had big crush on her twin Eiji, who was unfortunately as dense as their father when it came to seeing that a girl liked him. She looked around the room to see her other peer members. Shikamaru Nara was sleeping and Choji Akimichi, who was eating chips, were beside one another as usual, since it was rare to see one without the other. Just in front of them was her brother, who sat with Kiba Inuzuka, and his puppy Akamaru, who rested on top of his head. Shino Aburame, the ever-quiet member of class, sat at the back with the shy Hinata Hyuga beside him. Then in front of them was Yakumo Karama, who was a nice girl but she did not know her much, and a pale boy she did not recognize. Then glancing at the table in front of her twins was where Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno sat, with said girl trying to get the Uchiha's attention. Sakura Haruno was Sasuke Uchiha's #1 fangirl and she got on Mito's nerves. They used to be friends before Sakura went all fangirl. She really did wonder how on earth she managed to pass. Then there was Sasuke Uchiha. The boy was always broody and constantly miserable in Mito's eyes and caused her friendship with him from when they were younger to deteriorate completely. Now he enjoyed letting people know he was stronger than they were and that everyone should bow down to him due to being from the Uchiha clan. He was nothing like Itachi, who Mito liked since she had known him ever since she was little and was always nice to her. But she stayed away from Sasuke since the look he gave her sometimes freaked her out. It was like he was going to walk over to her and drag her away with him and have his way with her. While she could hold her own perfectly, the way he looked at her made her feel uneasy. As she shook her head, Irika walked in and everyone's attention focused on him. They listened in boredom for a good 20 minutes until eventually Irika got to the part they had all been waiting for. Now for the teams, he announced as everyone suddenly sat up straighter as Irika began calling out everyone's names. After a few minutes of announcing the first 6 teams, he got to the main group. Team 7 will be Eiji Namikaze, Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha. Your Jonin sensei is Kakashi Hatake, he called as Sakura hooped loudly at being on her crush's team while Sasuke just grunted. Eiji meanwhile groaned at the thought of being with the emo and the fangirl. Kiba patted him on the back. Well, at least it's with Kakashi, Eiji thought, since he guessed that was not so bad. Though he and Mito were surprised they were not together, but he guessed he could deal with it. Team 8 will be Shino Aburame, Yakumo Kurama and Hinata Hyuga. Your Jonin sensei is Kurenai Yuhi. Said 3 genin looked at one another and nodded, being happy with the outcome. Team 10 will be Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akimichi and Kiba Inuzuka. Your Jonin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Ino quickly cried out in horror since she was stuck in her mind with the fatty and the kid with fleas. Choji didn't mind and gave a thumbs up to Kiba, who happily gave one back. Team 9 is still operational, he said before getting to his last team. The final team is Team 11, consisting of Mito Namikaze, Shikamaru Nara and Sai. Your Jonin sensei is Kushina Uzumaki. Both Mito and Eiji had their jaws drop. Why Ka-chan Mito / my sensei, the twins thought, both clearly surprised as was the rest of the class. They all knew Twins' mother was one of the best in the village that was on par with the Sannin. Sasuke seethed a little, both at not getting such a powerful teacher and not being on Mito's team. Mito meanwhile looked around the room at her 2 teammates. Shikamaru I can work with, though the lazy ass is going to need a push every 5 minutes, she thought, since she knew how lazy Nara could be. But she was a little stumped at the pale kid with the eerie smile on his face. As they chatted amongst one another, they all saw another Chunin come into the room and whisper into Irika's ear. Everyone's attention was on them since they saw Irika's look of disbelief on his face. Right now in the Chunin stadium? Irika asked as the Chunin nodded vigorously. Irika-sensei, what's happening in the Chunin stadium? Ino asked as everyone's attention was peaking. Irika turned to them looking a little conflicted, but the Chunin beside him tapped him on the shoulder. Come on Irika, when are they going to see a battle like this again? It might do them some good to see it, he said before he left the room. Irika saw the eager faces on their faces and spoke up. I just got word that the Sandaime Hokage is in a sparring battle in the Chunin Stadium with the Hokage's eldest child, and it seems to be getting quite heavy. Many of the shinobi are going to watch. Since you're all genin now, maybe it would be good for you all to see this battle, Irika said, and saw Mito and Eiji look at him in disbelief before they got excited looks on their faces and jumped out of their seats and ran out the room. Quickly everyone else ran out of the room after the twins. Hokage's office. Unknown to the genin, the Hokage and many of the jonins had been watching their reactions to the team assignments. Kushina got a little annoyed that only Mito was given to her, but after hearing the reasoning she understood, while the other jonins were happy with their charges. But they also heard Irika's announcement and look out the window to see many shinobi and civilian heading towards the stadium. The Sandaime was taking on the Hokage's eldest. Kushina and Minato looked a little gobsmacked while Asuma whistled. Clearly none of them saw it coming. Well, I don't know about all of you, but I want to see this. I want to see how strong little Naruto-chan has become, Kurenai said, since she always had a soft spot for the blonde and was the first to leave, quickly followed by Asuma and all the other jonin. Kushina and Minato took a moment to process what they heard before Minato flashed them both out of the room and towards the Chunin Stadium. Chunin Stadium. Katan, Goryuka no Jutsu. Suetun, Heidoro Ponpu. A huge blast of fire and water shot out of the mouths of Naruto and Hiruzen and collided into one another as the A-rank techniques fought for dominance over one another and steam began to pour into the air. The stadium got very warm all of a sudden from the attack. From the steam, Hiruzen jumped forward with his adamantine staff in hand, having summoned it moments earlier, and twirled it around in his hands. Naruto watched the staff come down and dress Shigure from its sheath and stopped the powerful weapon where it was, though he felt the attack in full force as his shoulder buckled a little. Naruto tried a leg sweep, but Hiruzen saw it coming and quickly dodged the attack. Seeing Hiruzen in midair, Naruto quickly made more hand signs. Futon, Daitapa, he shouted and blasted a strong burst of wind at Hiruzen, which slammed into the old Hokage and slammed him into the ground. However, the previous Hokage burst into smoke. A clone, Naruto thought, as did many others as Naruto began looking around. He not to my right, left, front or behind. No way would he try the air after that attack, which leaves one place. Chakra swirled around Naruto's right fist before he slammed his fist to the ground, causing a shock wave to hit the ground and making the earth all around him to explode upwards, as well as causing cracks to form along the walls and barrier. From the left of him, Hiruzen was forced out of the ground from the attack, but again he disappeared in smoke. Naruto was about to look right before a strong impact from the adamantine staff slammed into his head and threw him across the field and through a tree. Naruto shook his head as he felt his brain rattle from that one and saw Hiruzen standing where he was previously standing. "You hinged into a piece of rubble," he said as Hiruzen nodded, making Naruto chuckle. "After 3 years you're still taking me to school." Hiruzen smiled and they both saw the stadium fill up with shinobi and citizens. Naruto saw the twins with their classmates, with the twins having stars in their eyes at watching their brother battle. Up in the Kage box he saw his parents with Kakashi, the elders, and some of the clan heads. "Since we have an audience, let's take this up a notch," he said as Hiruzen nodded eagerly as Naruto lifted his sleeves up to reveal weight seals around his wrists and on his ankles. "Kai," he said as they broke and immediately felt a lot lighter and cracked his neck. "Let's go, Gigi," he said as both Naruto and Hiruzen leaned back before they sped toward each other, speeds that only the strongest Jonin, clan heads, and Kage-level shinobi could follow. They watched as loud slams and felt shock waves hit the arena as they tried to follow Naruto and Hiruzen's movements. After a minute they saw Naruto and Hiruzen appeared on top of tone of the wall by the edge of one of the barriers and watched as Naruto slammed right fist into Hiruzen's faces and Hiruzen slammed his left fist into Naruto's. They stepped back and then both did a high kick that connected with one another and caused the one beneath them to completely collapse. For the next 10 minutes everyone leaned forward in awe as they watched the Sandaime Hokage and the eldest of the Yondaime duke it out with one another as they threw fist after fist, swing after swing and jutsu after jutsu at one another. His parents were barely able to comprehend what was happening. They knew he must have gotten stronger, but to such a degree was just incredible. Tsunade grinned meanwhile, knowing she helped create this fine shinobi in front of her. In the stands the genin were all in awe, as was the chunin and many of the jonin and all the civilians. Mito and Eiji could stay in their seats since watching their big brother fight such a powerful shinobi was the most awesome sight they had ever seen. "Naruchan is incredible," Kushina whispered in awe as Mikoto stood next to her in a similar state. Minato was lost for words, as was Tsunade, before Minato put his hand in pocket and pulled a bingo book and began looking for Naruto's page. When he did, his eyes almost rolled out of their sockets. He handed it over to Kushina, who had Tsunade and Mikoto look over her shoulders. They read the page in front of them and looked ready to faint completely. Name: Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Age: 18. Gender: male. Origin: Konohagakure. Shinobi rank: Jonin. Caliber rank: S. Known alias: Konoha no Tsubasa Akuma, Konoha's Blade Devil. Known clan affiliation: Uzumaki clan. Known element affinities: Futon, Doton, Suiton. Skill list: Taijutsu, 4.5. Ninjutsu, 4.5. Genjutsu, 1. Intelligence, 4.5. Strength, 4.5. Speed, 5. Stamina, 5. Hand seals, 4. Weapons: katana made of black metal with a purple guard and black sheath. Katana with a flower-shaped guard with a white and green sheath. Physical description: stands at 6 feet 3 inches and weighs 205 pounds. Golden blonde hair and violet eyes. Tan skin and is known to wear traditional leaf shinobi attire with a red scarf and red cloak with black flames. Special abilities: known to have chakra sensor-like abilities. Despite age, he has enough chakra for 2 Kages. Known family: Minato Namikaze, Yondaime Hokage, Kiroi Senku, Kushina Uzumaki, Benihime. Other information: is known to have defeated and killed 7 swordsman members Raiga Kurisuki and Kushimaru Kuriare, as well as Chukichi of Kiri and Gari of Explosion Release. Bounty: 65 million Ryo, dead or alive, stationed by IWA. 65 million Ryo, alive, stationed by Oto. 60 million Ryo, dead or alive, stationed by Kiri. Not only was Kushina, Tsunade and Mikoto reading it, but many of the clan heads and the elders were reading the bingo books they kept on them and began to realize just how much potential and how powerful this young man really was. He could be a real benefit to this village, Inoichi stated as Shikaku Nara and Choza Akimichi all nodded in agreement. His strength is indeed impressive. He would make a fine tool for this village, Hamura said, but did not see the glare from Kushina for the tool reference. As they fought in the air, both landed a strong kick to one another, making them both fall towards the ground. How strong is this Gaki Hiruzen? Enma complained to his summoner, though Hiruzen did not answer. He was enjoying the battle too much. Naruto barely touched the ground before he pushed himself back into the air, and with his hand on Shigure and his other hand on his wrist he swung down. "Hiryu, Kane," he called as he slashed down with so much force that a powerful slash of chakra rocket from the blade and towards Hiruzen. Doton, Doria Hiki, Katon, Kakiryu no Jutsu. Hiruzen performed the two jutsu in rapid succession as a large boulder of earth formed from the earth to try and block the strike, while from behind it a large dragon head made of fire shot over it and towards Naruto. The strike destroyed the wall of earth, showing how powerful it was, but being weakened by the earth wall, Hiruzen struck the slash with his adamantine staff and destroyed it while the fire dragon was still heading towards Naruto. Suitun, Suijin Hiki. Taking a deep breath, a large torrent of water shot out of Naruto's mouth and formed a large wall encampment around Naruto, creating a strong shield of water to protect him. The dragon hit the water wall and the wall managed to do its job, as steam was all that was left as the dragon disappeared. As Naruto landed on the ground, Hiruzen appeared next to him and did more hand seals. Doton, Doria Taiga. The ground beneath Naruto suddenly became soft and clumpy and found himself skidding as mud now covered his legs. Katon, Karyu Enden. With another jutsu, the dragon fire bullets shot forward and hit Naruto as his body engulfed in fire. Many in the arena looked worried and thought it was over, but watched as Naruto poofed out of existence, showing it was just a clone. Before they could scan where he was, they watched as Naruto dropped out of the sky with his right fist with chakra around it. He was coming down too fast and Hiruzen would never have been able to dodge it, so with his adamantine staff Hiruzen blocked Naruto's powerful strike. The amount of power was evident when a strong shockwave slammed into everything that was behind Hiruzen and destroyed was what remaining of one of the wall. Meanwhile, Hiruzen noticed that a very tiny crack appeared in his staff. The fact that his staff is supposedly indestructible, it shows how strong that strike was. Futon, Fukunai, Naruto said as kunais made of wind formed around him and shot off towards Hiruzen at a very quick speed. Katon, Gukakyu no Jutsu, Hiruzen said as the fireball engulfed the kunais, getting rid of them completely before Naruto shot forward, and everyone that could see him move saw him draw at Shusui as he now gripped his two swords in his hands. Two swords, huh? Many thought, since they guessed Naruto must have picked that up during his time away. Hiruzen held his staffs in his hands as he readied for the blades to him, but to his and everyone's surprise Naruto did not aim at him and instead spun around him. It was only as he watched Naruto spin around that he noticed his chakra and wind element were gathering. It's not meant to strike, it meant to push, Hiruzen suddenly realized, but before he could get away a powerful gust of wind suddenly picked up and slammed into Hiruzen, throwing him high into the air as he spun around out of control. Takanami, Naruto said as he watched as the wind threw Hiruzen into the air while Kushina looked impressed at them over. Using swords and rotation to pick the wind up and slam it into the opponent. It's very effective and very creative, Kushina applauded as everyone else nodded. On the ground Naruto watched as Hiruzen went into the air and began to fall back down again. He jumped and landed on the wall and caused the familiar swirling sound of the Rasengan to sound out. Everyone watched as the Rasengan formed into his hand as Naruto jumped from the wall towards Hiruzen and slammed it into the old Hokage's gut. Rasengan, Naruto called out as it hit its mark and threw Hiruzen from the air right into the wall back on the ground, making a loud crash ring out as a small dust cloud formed. Whoa, the twins both said, as did many of the other students and civilians. The shinobi looked a little awestruck out how this young shinobi was faring against a former Hokage. Naruto grinned and landed on the ground, but before he could do anything Hiruzen's staff suddenly extended and slammed into his gut, forcing him back and slamming him into the wall as well. That sucked, Naruto complained as he felt the wind get completely knocked out of him. Everyone was on their feet as both shinobi were looking down at the arena. Naruto-chan and Hiruzen are really going at it. The arena is almost destroyed, Kushina said and looked down at the spot where her son landed. Well, I am not all that surprised. Sensei has wanted to test Naruto ever since he left to join the Guardians. I know he has been looking forward to this spar for some time, Tsunade stated. I don't think we can really call it a spar since the stadium is almost gone, Shikaka Nara stated with many nodding in agreement. As expected, Itachi said as Shizuka, Anko and Hana all sat with him in the stands, having heard about this matchup earlier. He was bound to get stronger, but to go against a former Kage is nothing short of incredible, Kurenai stated as Asuma nodded his head with the other Jonin. Safe to say I think little Naruto has surpassed us all, Shizen said with many of the Jonin grumbling but knowing it was true. I think there are only a handful of people that could beat him now, and they are all in Kage box. They looked up at the Kage box where Minato, Kushina, Tsunade and Mikoto were standing and they quickly all nodded. The chatter quickly died down when they saw both Naruto and Hiruzen get out of the holes in the wall. Hiruzen's helmet was gone, as was the bit of clothing where the Rasengan hit. A scorch mark was present on his stomach and had multiple bruises and cuts forming on his face and arms, with a small trickle of blood going down his forehead. Naruto was in a similar state with bruises and cut over his body, but saw a large gash on the side of his face where he impacted the wall, which was bleeding profusely, and most of his shirt was gone, revealing his muscles body. Many of the females in the stadium blushed at his physique while others winced at the gash since it looked like a nasty one as blood kept leaking from it. "I think you should get that gash seen too, Naruto-kun," Hiruzen said, but Naruto shook his head. "I will afterwards. If I tried to use the Shosen in a real-life battle, then the enemy would not give me a chance to heal myself," he stated as spat a bit of blood out of his mouth. Many agreed with the statement since it was very true. Hiruzen just nodded to him as Naruto sheathed Shigure and just had Shusui out. Quickly the two stormed forward and clashed again as the adamantine staff met the black blade. Itoryu, Shishido. A single long slash pushed towards Hiruzen as Naruto swung his blade down, but Hiruzen blocked the strike with his staffs and caused it to vanish. Hiruzen swung his staff around his head before his hands went into his pouches. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Hundreds of shurikens suddenly appeared in the air and sped towards Naruto, who knew there were too many to count. It was rare to find someone who could create clones of ninja weapons in such a way, but then again Hiruzen was the professor for a reason. "Futon, Danjikanami," he said, slamming his hands on the ground as a strong shockwave of wind hit the arena and forced the kunai away as Hiruzen held his hands in front of his face. As he did, Naruto appeared and kicked him in the guy, sending him towards the wall. However, he landed on the wall and punched Naruto right where the gash was, sending a strong wave of pain through Naruto's head and making him stumble back as more blood poured down his face. Hiruzen gave him an apologetic look, but Naruto understood. "In battle you use injuries to your advantage." Hiruzen nodded as the two began a match between Bojutsu and Kenjutsu. As sparks flew between them for the next 5 minutes, those Jonin or above noticed Naruto's moves had gotten slower and saw his face had gone a little pale. The wound on his head was now taking its toll on him. Though looking at Hiruzen they could see he had taken quite beating, and with his old age he was beginning to slow down as well now. "Hokage-sama, we might want to stop them before one of them get badly hurt or before we lose the stadium completely," Shikaku offered as Minato nodded. Kushina looked at Naruto worriedly and she could see how nasty that wound on his head was. Minato gave the word to Tsunade, who nodded and held her arm up for everyone to see. "The match is over," she shouted as Naruto and Hiruzen's fists stopped just inches from one another's. "Since we have no victor or a loser, this match is a draw." The whole stadium was silent as the declaration, but to Naruto's surprise no one booed but instead cheered and gave a round of applause for the amazing match they just watched. "Oniai-chan is the best," he could hear from Mito and Eiji as well as Mina, who was sitting with Shizen. He looked up to see his mother clapping wholeheartedly, shouting praise for her baby, as was Mikoto, while Minato was sending him a proud look. He looked over at the Jonin and saw Kurenai give him a praising nod and Asuma give him a thumbs up for being able to keep up with his old man. Guy and a mini clone of his were shouting about youth while Kakashi was too busy reading his Ika Ika. Naruto sighed happily to himself as he let himself fall to the ground with him landing on his butt as he took a breather. The throbbing pain in his head was horrid and it made him feel like he had an Anko hangover with no sleep. He felt Hiruzen sit down beside him as Enma changed back into his regular form and rub his shoulders. "I don't think we have fought like that in nearly 2 decades, he said as Hiruzen quickly agreed with him before Enma returned to his home. Naruto enjoyed the rest as he looked over at his Gigi. "You weren't going all out, were you, Gigi?" he said as Hiruzen shrugged and smiled at him. "Maybe not, but we both know you weren't either," he said, referencing his Mokuton. Hiruzen was using a good 70% of his strength and Naruto was around the same. If the match had gone on any longer, then Hiruzen would have been the victor due to having more experience and Naruto's head injury. Despite that, he was proud of his surrogate grandson since he had become a splendid shinobi and now knew without a doubt Naruto would surpass him very soon. As they sat down talking, Tsunade along with Kushina appeared in front of them as Kushina began fussing over Naruto and telling him how proud she was of him. She gave him lots of mother kisses which made him blush a little and those still watching to laugh. "Look at the state of you two," Tsunade said, shaking her head at both of them as both Naruto and Hiruzen just gave her a cheesy smile. She rolled her eyes before she looked over at Kushina. "Let's get them to the hospital and get them patched up," Tsunade said, with Kushina agreeing completely as she took her son's right arm over her shoulder and helped him up while Tsunade did the same with Hiruzen before shining away. Later that day Naruto sat at Ichiraku's ramen with Hiruzen both covered in bandages in various spots as they enjoyed their ramen. Mito and Eiji were talking excitedly with Naruto and Hiruzen asking all about their match and if they could teach them some of their jutsu. Kushina was right next to Naruto as she kept checking his bandages were secure with Naruto telling her he was fine. She didn't seem to get the hint. Minato meanwhile shook his head at his wife's actions as Mina was sat on his lap and peacefully ate their ramen together ignoring the overbearing Kushina and the awestruck Mito and Eiji. They left that to Naruto to deal with. That's it for part 6. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.